So welcome everybody. Thanks for attending with Ken and I here. We're gonna, the topic for today is gonna be Ignite Your Transformation Journey, going from project to product. And so Kate, do you wanna do a little bit of a shout out here about our circle? Since I don't have you have the information about that, and show everybody what the DASA, what our circle is here.
Sure. So DASA is a global organization, DevOps Agile Skills Association, focused on training and certification for the DevOps community. We are launching the Americas market for DASA. So we being a lot of those of us that have been talking at the beginning of this. And the Americas region is meant to focus on North and South America currently as one circle. So when we're providing content, hopefully it is in your closest time zone. I know Jan joined us from the Czech Republic. Welcome from EMEA. DASA is huge in the European market, a lot larger. The Americas is a newer market for us, an emerging market. So I don't know what time it is for you, but thank you for joining us late in your day.
It's just 10 p.m.
10 p.m. So late in your day. The goal is for us to provide a community of DevOps conversationalists and professionals that are on their journey and maturity path. There's a focus on free webinars, on producing content, on building a community. And then we also offer training and certifications for people interested in that. But right now we're focused on our Americas region, both North and South America. John, Ken, Mike, and myself work together with an organization called DevOps Catalyst that is a training partner for DASA, and we're all based out of North Carolina in the United States. And we have partners, Christine and Jorge, that cover Canada and Mexico. And sometimes our presentations, like last month, are also offered in Spanish in the second hour for our Spanish-speaking audience. But you can message me for more information or connect with any of us on LinkedIn, and we'd love to start conversations and get to know y'all better. Was that good?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I want to introduce you guys to Kate, because she's going to be an important player for us and a resource for everybody here as we start communicating, scaling out, and we start going across into the Americas markets. And hi, Christine. I know your video is off. You're hiding there, but hey, glad you can make it. And Christine, if you're in Canada, Christine's going to be your main point of contact. And Jorge's not here, but he would be covering the Mexico or the South America, the Mexico and Latin America area. There's a whole group of people that he's working with that are very tight. We're a tight knit group that we're all together. And so, while we've been talking, I put up the goals and objectives here of DASA. So what I will share with you is that I've been with DASA for about 5 years now, working with them. And the key is that what we're rolling out with here in the next couple months, between the products of the working groups, we've just launched and we're coming to market with the leadership certification. The DevOps coach has been around. But that combination of the working group products, the membership, and all this stuff together, I don't know of another organization that has what DASA has. And what I mean by that is, yes, there's DevOps Institute, and there's a lot of different organizations out there, but nobody is quite looking at it through the lens and at the perspective than what DASA is. And that's why I'm really excited, because they put it together in a way that for the past several years, my clients have been very, very successful using what, the different modules and different, way they piece this together. And we're going to get into some of that stuff here. So, the competency model, the goals, we got a leadership framework coming out. And again, it really helps baseline the conversations into a reality that works. So for today, you got myself. I'm John Ruppel. I'm a U.S. ambassador for DASA, teach the coach in the leadership class. And I do, my whole thing is I help write these standards. I help write training for DASA and other organizations around the world. I teach it. I go out in the trenches, and I'm actually a hands-on consultant, get in and make sure that what we're presenting, when we write these standards and then we go to write the curriculum and these certification programs, that it's real, that it's really going to work for you and get results. And that's how I measure success, is if we've wrote the standards correctly and written the training correctly, then you as the student or the person out there trying to use this content knowledge, these two information tools, that you're going to be successful. And that's really the sort of the role I play in the sort of the world that I live in right now. So it's a lot of fun. Ken?
Hey folks, I'm Ken Russell. Nice to see you out there, and thank you for joining us today. I'm I guess a career technologist, a multiple time CIO for organizations. You may know some of the organizations I've worked with. I was at Duke Energy here in the States. I was head of enterprise architecture at Bank of America. Spent 5 years at Cisco out in California. My focus is at that nexus between organization change and technology. So a lot of what you're going to hear today are, not so much about tools, but about the other things that sometimes a successful DevOps environment, they tend to kind of rush by. So John and I are excited to be here to help you with some of these concepts. So hope you enjoy it.
So let's get going. I want to ask you guys a question then. So what does it mean when we say evolve from project to product? What does that mean? You guys come off mute. Help us out here. What's your thoughts on it?
New way of working for projects. I mean, how can you transform projects to more agile world? That is my interest. Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts on what it means to go project to product? And again, I'm looking at multiple screens here, so if I'm not looking directly in the camera, I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm just trying to see your face over here. Go ahead, Jan. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a switch of the mindset, actually, of the way of working, in the team, for me.
Yeah, no, you guys are both correct. I mean, and there's much more to it, which we're going to get into here. A lot of people, they look at it, okay, from a project perspective, just taking a step back, keeping it really simple. You're typically going step by step through a waterfall process that's been around for a while. You're working from a project plan. I mean, MS project plan. And I used to be, really had a lot of fun with those in the day, but today it's been a while since I've touched a project plan. And then archiving, achieving dates and milestones, right? You're trying to get some functionality, some feature built, and there's some type of date assigned to it. And when we look in the product side of the world now, we're working what we call iteratively in small chunks. We're working from a backlog, which basically takes, that sort of organization of how we do our cadences. And, if you're working in sprints, if you're using a Scrum or Kanban type approach, whatever methodology you want to choose, that's pretty much becomes now sort of you're working these iteratively through these small chunks. And that becomes sort of the way of replaces that project plan. And then now you're looking at how do I flow value to the customer? And what does that value proposition mean? And, is the customer satisfied? And so that becomes the focus now versus achieving dates to a certain milestone. It's, hey, are we getting value to the customer in the time that they need it? So we've been failing. Anybody have any idea how the magnitude of failures that have been happening when we're trying to get to this, I'm going to call it a dynamic way of working, when we're saying we're going to take on an agile or DevOps way of working, and part of this going to project to product is part of that evolution. Anybody have any idea what our failure rates have been recently?
I think those are the attempts to implement agile.
Yeah. Do you know
Can
how often
be not implemented?
Yeah. Do you know what a grade? Are we doing 50% failure rates, 70% failure rates, 90% failure rates? What's the failure rate?
Very high, I guess.
Yeah. Anybody want to guess?
85.
Okay, I heard 80 and I heard 85. Any other takers? All right. Well, the number is 70 to 94 plus, depending upon your source. And the reason why is it's sort of what Ken was alluding to earlier. It's, we all like to start off with tools and, the process stuff, but really it's all because it's about culture. It is all about culture. And this gets into, I think, you guys were talking about mindsets and thinking differently. That's really the key here. That is truly the key. So the big question now is,
Aquí abajo estaban los jefes haciendo un cambio y que una prueba de una rotación. Cuando eso estaban intentando de que butear desde la caja de disco y estaba de que hasta el vicepresidente de tecnología aquí.
You on mute. Yeah, thank you. All right. So the real question now is, how do we evolve from project to product? And so what we have is we have what we're going to call the transformation sequence. Now, what this is this is the proven path for how the top 16% of elite organizations, if you look at the DevOps reports, state of affairs reports, this is basically the sequence of what they follow. It starts off with culture. You want to get that transformational culture in. You want to be working by vision. Transparency is a very high value, or, it's key to work transparently so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And basically, there's going to be, going back to that mindset piece, is you're going to have, if you're evolving your organization and trying to evolve, there's going to be some people that say, hey, you know what, this isn't for me. Or, hey, I don't want to do it this way because I have another agenda. I want to serve myself versus serve the team. And so you're going to have some policies in place to take care of those types of situations. And that's really the culture that you want to put in place. When you get to the mindset piece now, how do we do things at ABC Corp? You may hear that, right? People are going to say, oh, well, we're not, this is how we always do it here. Well, when I'm hearing something like that, and we want to get, people are used to using project plans, and we're trying to, now work out of a backlog, and, oh, this is not how we do it here. To me, that's a great that's a great target now of something that needs to be evolved. And, the person, why is that person saying that? It's typically because the knowledge that behind how we do things has been lost. The context of why the process was defined or how things were created when they, initially were doing things is, we don't know that anymore. The times have changed. So going back to the mindset piece, we got to reject, or, don't condone this type of mentality. And it really becomes, again, focusing on flowing value to the customer to meet their needs in their time frame. So when you put this correct culture and mindset in place, now you're going to attract the appropriate people, or the people that, that you want to desire, the desired people to get these types of results. They're going to think and work in this way. And so now what they're going to do is those folks are going to say, okay, if I'm going to be in this position and I need to flow value to the customer, then these are going to be the processes and the tools that I need. And our processes are going to be dynamic. They're going to be iterative, because that's how we're going to be working and building upon. And it's going to include the big thing here when we talk about the process flows and working with, and working transparently, the customer. The customer needs to be into the working teams, making the decisions. And then from once you got the processes defined about, how we're going to go about doing things, now you can get into the technology pieces. And this is where you want to do standards-based. You don't want to get too proprietary on the technology. You don't want to get too crazy on the customizations. If you can avoid it, it's because it's all, since you're working in a dynamic world, your tool set and your is going to evolve as you get your delivery processes evolved over time. So there's going to be change in the future. And of course, you want them to be secure. And the golden rule for your developers and your engineers is the tools do not dictate how that engineer is going to work. So you want to make sure with your engineer folks and the developer folks that they have the tools they need and work in the way that they want to work.
Yeah, thank you, John. I tell you what, I love that sequence for a lot of reasons, but particularly because it really shows that the tools aren't the first thing that you do. And I think so many organizations are guilty of that. They just go, where's my tool? What do I do? What do I buy? I'm going to linger here on this slide a bit. It's about making a difference and transforming your talent to get ready for a transformation sequence, for example. But before I go into this, I want to go ahead and request that you guys consider, if you hear a word or a phrase that interests you during this session, I encourage you to write it down. I typically do a mind map or a word cloud, that kind of thing. If I see something interesting, I'll write it down, circle it, so I'll remember it. John and I will be doing an exercise at the very end of this session that said that may come in handy to kind of key in on some of these keywords that we're talking about. So for example, as we're talking about, making a difference with your talent, knowledge leadership. I love this one because, it's about leveraging those tools when it's appropriate, but also the methods and approaches in a way and how they impact knowledge sharing, not knowledge hoarding, sharing the knowledge. This next one I like because it's about guiding experience, yeah, but it's also guiding the experience of your organization as a leader. Helping individuals get ready for growth by pairing them, for example, with knowledgeable coworkers or consultants or other industry leaders that may be in your organization and they may be beyond your organization. And finally, the third one here is this. I love this one because how can you guarantee learning, for example? How can you guarantee a transformation? Well, it's by shaking someone to their core, what we would call a disorienting dilemma, that someone has to say, I got to go this way or I've got to go that way. But it disorients, and that disorienting event in your brain causes you to remember and causes you to make that transformation. Again, when confidence is tested, your beliefs are questioned a bit, and what is thought to be certain is shown perhaps not to be so. So think about that one a little bit. And then finally, this idea of kinetic relationships, this idea that you can't have a relationship with just one interaction at a time. Here in the States, we talk about, as a CIO, I get invited to a golf game from, someone. And, once a year I get an invitation. Well, that's not a relationship. They want to sell me something. If you want to have a kinetic relationship, it's about building interactions and connections over time into relationships that'll last. So with that, that'll kind of cue up the next part of the transformation sequence. So John, I'll toss it back to you.
All right, good. Yeah, and this gets into what we're going to do now is we basically walked you through the sequence and we've given you a foundation to work from. And again, we're talking about that igniting of, going from project to product. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take you through two actual live examples. So for my client, we're going to label them as, name them as ABC Corp, because I can't use their real name. They're a 150-year-old company, privately owned still. They're the global industry leader, meaning they run the world in their industry. And I'll give you one thing I can say about them is that we all, our human survivability, the human species survivability is directly related to these folks being the leader, because they are helping our species survive every day. And then what they're doing is they're taking on, and we've been working on this transformation for them for 3 years now, where they literally are going from a project to product. And so we're going to walk you through, and I'm going to share with you those, what it took or what it's taking for them to be successful.
Yeah, and I'm going to share something as well from a larger organization. Again, we could take questions about other smaller ones if you'd like, but this idea from project to product is pretty amazing, particularly if you have a larger organization focus. I'm going to talk about a large metropolitan US-based school system, K through 12, kindergarten through the senior year of high school. Thousands of students, a large siloed administration, a large ERP, and then senior leadership revolving door, which again can really hurt any kind of transformation, but particularly a DevOps transformation. So I can talk about some challenges we had there, and also I've got some cultural things that I'll convey as well during this session.
Thanks. And speaking of silos, that's exactly what the organization, ABC Corp was all about. They had, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, they had welders, they had software development teams, they had big data analysis, embedded, I don't know if I said embedded systems already. So, but we've had multiple talents, all throughout, their organization. And then everybody was grouped, according to what they were working on. And so now they want to become the adopting DevOps and working from one end-to-end process, coming together as one and working iteratively. And what was really going to be challenging at the beginning, what was really interesting was this group was so much project based that when they did a sale, so the sales folks would sell a deal, that sale would then turn into an MS project and a project plan. I kid you not. And that's, the illustration I've got there in the corner, but it would be a project, and then they'd work that project through their proprietary traditional waterfall approach, going down the steps over time, and then they would deliver it. So their delivery mechanism of their sale was an MS project plan. It's going through the MS project plan. So to me, this is why it's a great candidate to talk about the culture. And so when I go back to that culture now, today they're working out of a backlog. They're using Microsoft DevOps tool. And so what they're doing is they basically worked with their clients. Their clients are working with them, and they've established this backlog. And now what they're doing is working iteratively. So the Mona Lisa drawing up there that I really like that, because it visually illustrates working iteratively, in that every sprint they're coming forth with something for the customer, or that the customer can see, yes, hey, this is getting me one step closer to that functionality I need. And the good thing that I can share with you is that their culture change is that they were able to, we have been able to integrate the critical, not the entire organization as a whole, but those that are working on the products. We've done a good job over the last couple of years being able to organize and get everybody working from that one end to end, the infinity loop of DevOps.
As I'm writing my word cloud here, John, it's very interesting. Having that conversation about using Azure DevOps, or what we used to call TFS, having that conversation about how to do a release pipeline and why that's important is much more valuable once you have this. This discussion at the higher level about, well, who are the players and why are they working? I often get asked about silos, and why do silos exist, and more importantly, why do they persist? And what's interesting about that is that, you talked about critical and organized and end to end and those kind of things, but it really kind of comes down to three major things for culture for me. And that's it. You have to understand and recognize that every organization has at least three of these formal, political, and cultural circles. There's a formal, there's the visible strategy, what's published, the structure, the systems, all those plans and processes that the company espouses, so that they say, this is what we do and this is who we are. But in truth, there is also this other idea of a political network. Okay, this is what we say we do, but this is who I know. I'm going to go get this done. I'm going to bypass the process, self-interest groups and roles, and that leads to this kind of cultural interesting element of these three circles here, is where they interact. Is that there's a network of relationships, as I mentioned before, how important it is to have strong relationships, implicit assumptions, and shared values that kind of impact these formal and political things. So culture is more than just the word culture. What makes up a culture is all these elements that kind of bring an organization to be unique and valuable in its own right, but also challenging in its unique way.
Yep, exactly. And challenging gets into the mind. I like this because that's a great segue into the mindset, right? So when you're going from project to product, I just try and keep it simple with the client, with my clients, is this question right here: how do I, and what am I doing to flow value to the customer in the time frame the customer needed? That's really, just keep it that simple, because when you're doing that, what's happening is there's a whole lot going on, both internally, at the individual level, at the personal level, and also at the organizational level. And going back to that culture, you have to have a mindset and culture now. What you're really going to be doing here is you're going to be changing the value and belief sets. And so that means, as a person, for you guys, if you've tried to do different leadership skills and develop from a transactional leader to a transformational leader, those value and belief sets are oil and water. They do not mix. And so how can I be genuine and be that genuine transformation, and that means you have to change. That means the organization has to change. And that just doesn't happen, the flip of a switch or click your fingers, hey, I'm changed. It takes a lot of work, right? So one way to think about this when you're going to be talking about, flowing that value, is think of it as there's a date and time when the customer's working with you in your teams, and the customer and you say, yep, this is the idea. We're going to put it in the backlog, and we've basically sort of taken it out of our brain, and now we've got it documented. Now the time to measurement of when that is, what I'll say that the duration that you measure to is, when does that customer put that idea, apply it to their world, so that they realize the value from when it was put in the backlog to when they realize real value, or actually put it into practice to realize the value. That's the time frame that you measure by. And if you think, it was one quick thing. If you think about it in that manner, you now get a sense of, that gives you some hint or insight into the magnitude of change on the personal and based at the organizational level. Go ahead, Ken, sorry.
No, that's okay. My mind map is getting full on my page here, but I'm going to mention 3 words that you said that's going to segue into what I'm talking about here, because mindset is so critical, folks, to have that correct state of mind and approach for your organization. John talked about value and how that flows to these transformations. And probably the most key word was time. The time to do that, the time it takes to make all these things happen, because it's not easy, right? But I have 2 words I'm going to focus on this particular slide with you guys. And one of those is community. This idea that it takes a community. It's not something that to be taken lightly. We talk about relationships and those kind of things, but you need to find a way to identify our political skills in an organization. Agenda setting is one thing, of course, but mapping that political terrain. And I don't mean in a kind of a nefarious way, but just understanding the rules, both espoused, that are written versus the ones that are not. And then, of course, finding that time to network and create these coalitions of folks that want to do something as well, or folks you need to be aware of. Bargaining and negotiating is part of your mindset as well. It's not enough to sit in an ivory tower to say, oh, this is what I need to do. And if they don't do it, then harumph. It really takes this idea of communicating back and forth, which is the next part of this is like, how do we communicate what is correct and what is not? Well, because what is correct to you may not be correct to someone else. So then it is collaborating. Is it collaborating when only one person is doing the talking? So think about that for a second. You've already heard the term monologue. That's one person talking and talking at you, probably waiting for you to stop talking so they could talk. That's how it usually is back and forth. But communicating, that dialogue, is that conversation, that bidirectional flow that John was talking about, that makes it easier and more effective to create a mindset, an organizational mindset. All right, so finally, who makes these rules for collaborating? Can a dialogue exist without understanding that community you're in? And my offering is that no, you have to understand the environment that you're in. But it's more important that if without an appropriate knowledge, it's difficult to make any reasonable, meaningful decision. So, take time to explore your community, your organization, and take time to collaborate in a meaningful way. Have that dialogue, not the monologue.
That's good. And that, that you're talking about people, right? It boils down to people. And so from, again, going back to the evolution of the customer here. So my clients, so what was really interesting was they're in their silo, they had their teams established that way. But now what you're doing is you're breaking this down and you're forming self-forming autonomous teams, which are empowered. And the key thing here is that the decision-making that used to be done in the hierarchy or used to be done by executives is now being done in that Scrum team itself. And the way this works is with the customer being present. The customer has to be present and active. And that's actually, you're working and partnering with the customer. I mean, I wish I would have had this transparency when we were rolling out SiteMinder, the single sign-on leader a long time ago. I would have loved to have a customer with me directly that I could have worked with my system integrators to then put together the right way of how we were going to build some functionality capability and then roll that into the marketplace. But that's the value and that's the opportunity that we have here today. If you're thinking about from a flowing value, and it's all about product, from that product point of view, flowing value and working in the manner with the Scrum teams, with the customer present, this is a whole new ballgame for a lot of organizations and a lot of people. They haven't had this opportunity before. So I would say, look at this as look at it in that perspective, what I just prescribed. And then from there, you're going to see, you should start seeing, a lot different results, or, you're going to start your people and what your ideation and how you guys are innovating. It's going to take it to a whole new level.
Yeah, that the only reason this works, John, is that we have to make sure we understand and deal with that last word, the hierarchy. You're right about the people, you're right about the teams, and right about the innovation that comes from that. But so many of our organizations don't follow that. They have a very hierarchical way of operating. And I can tell you from experience that it's what kills a lot of programs. So I wanted to pull something from my work that I've done, that if I had to kind of bring it down to one little phrase about people, I wanted to share it here. And it's not the idea that if you're going to be successful at any of these programs, you have to have a pragmatic and interactive recommending body. You can call it a council if you want to. You can call it a team or a review board or whatever it may be, but you've got to have this participatory group focused on real life, down to the ground kind of things. It's okay to have great goals and lofty, aspirational architectures. But the most important thing is to make sure you take the time to assemble these subject matter experts, these domain architects, these technology specialists, even business representatives and delegates who are responsible for leading the direction, the discussion, definition, and readiness of an organization, but also the evolution of technologies. I think that's what I'm going to leave this slide on, is this idea of evolution. So people do all that, not a tool, not a process. People do that.
Yeah. And that gets into, you just mentioned process, right? Not a process, right? It's the people. So what the people are going to do is, so what we found for my client, the hardest thing was, how do they go from a project plan to a backlog? And what does it mean to be thinking and working iteratively? And this thing dynamically. So the way I would say that is, what I talk about with folks is, forget about all these terms of agile, DevOps, all that. Think in terms of static and dynamic. Is currently with a project plan and working a waterfall, step by step, it's pretty static. We're going from step to step to step. Not a lot of changes there. It's pretty much follow the recipe. And in a dynamic world, or working dynamically means things are changing, things are in flux, things are on the fly. The requirements may be changing on you. Your process steps may be changing on you. Things are dynamic. And so start the conversation with static versus dynamic. And from that context, then work your way into the terms, because as you have that dialogue with static and dynamic, then you can agree upon what does agile mean to you. Because if we ask, 3 or 4 of us here, everybody here on the call, we're going to get, could easily get just as many answers in the details of what agile and, DevOps are. So going again, that, trying to think from a product perspective, then it's work with the customer, from a customer's perspective, really delineate. What we did was the dates that they needed which functionality or which capability by. That was really what was really key to our backlog, creating that solid backlog. And then thinking and working iteratively, we went ahead and the customer went with Scrum, working by Scrum and Kanban boards and a combination of both. And so that was the process they chose. And then again, iteratively in small chunks, just, make sure that at the end of every sprint, when we were doing our cadences, at the end of every sprint, that we were able to demo some functionality. Then we could build upon that in the next sprint. Now, the key thing is that delivering in a timely manner. And so from a metrics wise, when you go to do flow metrics, we'll call it, or these productized metrics, this is new for everybody. And so if you haven't heard of the community out there called the Flow Framework Community, and their website's right there, flowframework.org, please jot that down, take a screenshot, or, copy this. But you want to go visit their site, and they do a lot of good examples and have some PDF downloadables and stuff that you can get into and learn about the metrics of how you can measure this. And that was really for my client. It took them about a couple months to make the transition. But once they got it, today they're looking at it in their life. They have a much higher quality of life. Their customers are a lot more happier. But it took a couple months to be able to sort that out. And what I'll say here is, there is no right or wrong. There's just what works for you and yours. So what I mean by that is, don't compare yourself to others. Work with your customer, figure this process flow out, what works for you guys, and then work on that. Focus on that, what's working for that, getting that customer what they need.
I think that's so true, John. We always talk about, what is valuable for the particular organization. There is no, boilerplate. There is no one size fits all. If there was such a thing as a technologist school, we all have probably learned that, it's people, process, and technology. But we often kind of skip past the people in the process and we go straight to the technology. We're very guilty of that. So what I wanted to do here with this idea of process and flow is give you a very simple kind of a model to use going forward. John mentioned this concept of, what does agile mean to you, and how we could sit here and we have, 19 different definitions. So embrace that. Be the translator. Be the person that can be the translator for your organization. involve partners as needed. And yeah, I've italicized partners because I want to make sure we distinguish between vendors and partners. It's not enough to just have a vendor relationship. And another time, another day, we'll talk about the difference between vendors and partners. But think about that word partner. Someone that actually has a relationship with you, a kinetic relationship with you, is willing to do things with you, and you're willing to help them too. But this model is very simple. It's the idea that in order to be able to do any of this stuff, before you get to tools, anything else, you have to understand how your organization works, what your processes are. You have to categorize them. And if you categorize them, if you kind of take the time to say, okay, this is where this goes, this is where this fits, this is what this does, then you can start to classify them. Well, if I've got that, that means that maybe I'm sunsetting this, and maybe this is a special use, or maybe this is our standard, as John was saying earlier. And if you do those two things, then you get clarity, you clarify. So a very simple model, 3 steps, the 3 C's, whatever you want to call it. But again, be the translator and categorize, classify, clarify.
So now we're to the point where, you know, everybody likes to go, which is the tools. So not sure if you guys have seen this periodic table of DevSecOps or Dev tools, DevOps tools, DevSecOps tools. Don't know. I'm just curious if you guys could raise your hand out there. I'm just curious on how many of you guys have seen this before. So the reason why I like this with my customers, hey, Gonzalo, glad you could make it. So the reason why I really like this with my customers is because regardless if they're a big technical shop and they know all the buzzwords and terms, or there's somebody that's new to it and doesn't know anything about, you know, these, you know, tools or CI/CD or, you know, how these things work. What this is this is a living, breathing site, and they update it. They do a good job updating it. And the legend. So if you start with the legend there, it gives you categories and tools. So what that does is it sort of acts as a checklist for you, and you can start the conversation with, okay, we're going to use this process. We need to now do a management tool to manage our stories, epics, tasking. How is that going to do that? Well, there's Rally, there's Jira, there's, you know, a couple others out there. So if you look in here, now you can go to that color code, you can go to that in you know, that area now, and you can see there's, you know, several different tools for that. And the thing is this website's interactive. So if you click on each periodic tool there, it takes you to a website that gives you information. Now you can compare and contrast. And so that's why I really like this site, is that for initial conversations, it's visual. So now everybody is visually tuned in, and you're not getting confused between the different tools. And you can also then frame out and have the initial framing discussion for how you want your tool sets, you know, what your thoughts are of what tools you may want to go after, or, you know, start the conversation. So again, I highly recommend on any tools and technology conversations, start with, you know, visually working with this periodic table of tools. And again, the website's there, the link's there. So please take a screenshot, picture, copy it down. 2 things on this is that, you know, it's all about, keep in mind, it's flowing data to the customer. I've been in several conversations and everybody gets excited about the tools and they want to do this. Oh, I want to do that. I want to do this. And then all of a sudden, you know, you're off in tool land. The other thing is that, oh, and the point of that was when you're in tool land, you've totally lost sight of flowing value to the customer, and it's the coolness or the cool factor about, oh, I want to, you know, it'd be cool to work this way. But always keep in mind that why you're doing this is flowing data to the customer. So the other thing is that we want to keep this simple, right? Easy to sustain, easy to access, easy to use, and realize that you're going to be evolving. You're going to be, your tool set's going to be iterative, just and dynamic, just like you are with your process and how you're working. The other key thing is that this is relatively new for everybody. And so there's a lot of vendors. The amount of vendors that jumped into the market last year and now this year, it's amazing, especially if you look at open source and the amount of open source startup tools that have started. They're flooding in, they're pouring in to this site, this area. So there's a lot of noise and confusion. For example, there's one product, they call themselves for CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous delivery. So there's one product out there that it's labeled continuous delivery. It's titled a CI, continual integration server, and it has a continuous deployment jargon to it. So that one tool itself covers all three aspects of CI/CD. You can't get much more confusing than that. So just be aware of the marketing hype, the noise, everybody's trying to sell their tools to you and stuff, and focus on, some articles and just get some experienced people that, understand the tools, and don't get caught up in the hype and the noise. Again, try and keep it simple.
My word cloud is growing, John. I have two words that I'll kind of use as in my transition to you from your stuff, is that excitement and noise. Those are two major things that kind of detract from actually getting stuff done. And I think we're like everybody else. We're like kids in a candy store is what my mom would say. We see something, we want to jump to that and gravitate toward that. But the thing is, that kind of excitement is easier if you take that time to kind of attenuate the noise away. And one of the ways you can do that is with these kind of these tips I'm going to share with you now. From the abstract, that crazy kind of fuzzy level, to the granular levels, DevOps tools describe and communicate. Okay, and I think that's what's really exciting about these next few things I'm going to share with you. Have you guys ever been in a situation where someone just says, "Oh yeah, we got policies and procedures for that," but they said it so quickly that you don't know what a policy is, you don't know what a procedure is. It's just policies and procedures. That's pretty quick. It also happens with measures and measurements and metrics. People tend to forget that you have measures and you have metrics. So you may hear those kind of things. Anytime you see an ampersand between two words, be cautious, be concerned. But anyway, the point is, let's take a few definitions. What is a standard or a principle? Or what is a policy? So here's a couple of quick definitions for you. Principles: simple, direct statements, declaratory. This is what we do. How technology should be applied. Very simple. One or two words, maybe a sentence. Then you have domain-specific policies that are focusing on an overarching principle, focusing specifically on the technology issues of each domain, so like a data domain or application domain. And then you have standards. So you shouldn't jump straight to standards, even though that's the exciting part. What are my standards? Well, if you're guided by the principles and you're guided by the policies, then making a standard that specifies the technology configuration, prescribed direction, specific processes necessary to achieve the work within the environment. As John said earlier, Azure DevOps. Okay, there you go. And then finally, this idea of architecture patterns. The way to attenuate noise, the way to get rid of noise quickly, is to make sure you've got a pattern. So you're not reinventing the wheel every single time you do something. So these are referential architectures. Sometimes they're visual, sometimes they're just written down policies and statements and patterns and architectures, but they are specific templates designed to demonstrate specific ways technology is implemented in your organization, not in somebody else's organization. You can't just cut and paste from Microsoft's or Oracle's website. You've got to say, this is what it means here. Again, principles, policies, standards, patterns.
And then, what to expect, right? So we went through the transformation sequence here, walked you through two different scenarios, two different clients, and what the critical points in each area that made them successful or have allowed them to be successful. So you're probably saying, okay, that sounds great, but what am I going to, what am I in for? What is my organization in for? What I can't stress enough is how hard this is. And what I mean by that is going back to my deep dive video with DASA, when I was asked, what is the number one thing, lesson learned, or advice you would give, you give your clients? And that is, be prepared to change. Don't underestimate the magnitude of change, both on a personal level and as the team at the organizational level. Don't underestimate that, because that to me is what I find. That's what I find to be the single biggest reason that clients struggle with. And on the personal level, remember, people handle stress differently. Some people, they show their stress symptoms differently. So, they may act out differently or at different times differently. So just be aware of that, right? And have the conversations up front and just acknowledge and keep working with your clients and working with yourself that, hey, look, this is, how am I doing? What do we need to do? And stay on top of that change piece. And then help pat each other on the back. I mean, getting through these transformations, it takes a little bit. So especially if you're swapping from, project to product, that's going from transactional based to transformational based. That's oil and water. They do not mix. That is a clear evolution. Now and that's the hard piece. So the unwillingness piece goes back to sort of what I mentioned earlier, is that, there's going to be folks that are entrenched, right? There's going to be folks that are going to be, how can I say that? I'll say it this way. The organization is now focused on flowing value to the customer. That's it. If you're not flowing to value to the customer, why are you here? You know, that is what we're all here for. So if everybody's in the canoe paddling in the same direction to flow value to the customer, and now you have somebody that's out for themselves, wants to get an incentive bonus or being incentivized a different way or whatever. And I did have a client. I had one client who the product owners with one of the most important leadership roles in the organization were incentivized directly against changing and evolving to be transformational and support the evolution to product way of thinking. So they fixed that. But for several months there, it was that is a great example where it wasn't so much that people were personally unwilling to change, which is what I was talking to a few minutes ago or referencing to, but here were folks that were incentivized. And so their unwillingness to change was due to the fact that they were being incentivized. They would lose money. They would lose a lot of money if they, you know, went along with the new way and played along with the team. They lost out. So again, when you find that unwillingness, figure out what it is. Is it a personal thing, or is it something that can be resolved, or how can you, but realize that you're going to run into some of that, and it's going to be, and they could be for some valid reasons.
Yeah, that's so right. And, you know, it speaks to culture, right? So one of the things I like about this transformation sequence is that you can print this thing out and hang it at your desk and you look at it every day and say, okay, that's where that fits in. You know, because, you know, John's right. I mean, you know, if you've got an executive who is incented to actually be against this, you need to at least, number one, be aware of it. You don't want to be blindsided. So take the time to think about what are the cultural things that are impacting your work and your ability to have a successful transformation sequence, the mindset, the people, the process, and even the tools. What are those things that are impacting that? People often ask me, you know, how difficult it is to do a digital transformation or a DevOps transformation or any kind of transformation. So I've come up with these kind of 4 pieces of that, and I wanted to kind of share them with you. And some of these kind of go back a ways because this one about consume and consumption. You may have heard about consumption models and things like that, but it really is about what we consume and how we consume these days, not so much what we create. Now think about this for a second. Back in 2007, a long time ago, this kind of changed our life, the iPhone, okay? And why? It wasn't because at that time we cared about things like RAM. How much RAM did a device have, our computer? How big was the hard drive in my computer? How fast could it go? We don't really care about that anymore. What we care about is, can I go on this and use an app to find out what the weather is? Can I go on this and find out where the best place to have dinner in Prague, for example? I want to go out with Jan. I think I got that right? He's Prague, is it? Okay. Anyway, right. The point is, so what we do is we use them, we consume this technology. We're not so much, we care about how it's created, but it's not so much about creating anymore, it's about consumption. It's also that we amplify these days. So one of the most popular roles for a technologist is a DBA, right? We still have them. We've had them for years, decades even. But I think it's time to drop the A part of it. We're no longer database administrators. It's time to kind of not do that anymore. We have to amplify what we do. So this idea of how we amplify our data these days and get more insight out of it. It used to be enough to do reports, a select statement or something like that. But now we have to say, well, what do these data mean? What are they telling us? And then finally, well, not finally, almost, this idea of collisions, this idea of these aha moments of discovery when you have these interactions like we're having here. I wish I could say it was in a hallway and we were all live and we could do these things, but we can still have interactions digitally. And I think that's where you have that kind of 1 + 1 = 3 kind of equation, that what we do together, put together, is much more valuable than us operating alone, our collisions. And then finally, as I kind of started off the presentation, it's our knowledge sharing that makes the difference. Not just what we know and what we keep close to the vest, but what we do and how we share it out with everybody else.
And one thing, you know, Ken, you use that when we were, you know, one of the conversations we had, you use this analogy of 2 folks walking down the hallway. One had peanut butter, one had the Hershey's bar, and they ran into each other. And then there you go, Reese's peanut butter cups. So, you know, think of it that way, is you want to, it's okay. Good things can come out of bumping into each other and, you know, sharing ideas.
Yeah, the academic word for that is propinquity. So there you go, a propinquitous moment.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at their time. So we're running a few minutes behind. So let's do this. Let's take let's just what we're going to do is we're going to do breakout rooms. We're going to do this as one whole group here. So what we'll do is have everybody come off mute, come off video, or go on to video, come off of mute. And what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 minutes and we're going to fill in our template, our transformation sequence template. And then the other thing we want to do is the word, right? Ken's been talking about the word here. So we're going to talk about, we want you guys to come up with the word. So based upon, and if you guys want to take a few minutes here to pick a scenario or, you know, go off of what we've been talking about, it doesn't matter, but let's pick a word about going from project to product. Why is that one word? How can you sum that up in one word? So with that, I'll go ahead and
take a moment to, I'll just talk a little more about that. You know, you made these little word maps, right? You've got these word clouds and you've been circling these words, hopefully you have. Or something that John or I have said maybe resonated with you. So John's going to walk us through an example of what he means by pick a word. We're trying to create a meaningful message that can help you put this transformation sequence circle in action. So John, off to you.
Yep. So, all right. So I'm looking at you guys. So what words are coming to mind when we think about project to project, project to product? Do you guys have a situation you want to share with us? Does somebody,
can it be 2 words?
Absolutely.
We'll go with 2. Yeah, we won't be stingy. No, we won't go 3, but we'll go 2.
Yeah, it's one term actually.
Okay.
I would say co-creation of value.
All right, let me do it this way then. Co-creation. Anybody have another word or set of words they want to put out there? Any other takers?
I'm trying to find another word for sponsorship. Yeah, like leadership, buy-in, and support, right?
Okay, gotcha. That's good.
Transparency.
Transparency. All right, I'll put that there. Sorry, I'm just going to put the transparency. Cool. All right. What else we got?
I liked the word amplify.
Okay.
I like the word flow.
Flow. Okay. You know what? We're going to use, since this is project to product, let's go with flow. Let's go with the flow word. Okay. So my thought for you guys is from a culture perspective. So you can see what Ken and I did here is we did we use the word vision, and you can see in the green text walking around sort of some of the bullets when we, you know, how the word vision correlates to culture, mindset, people, process, tools. So let's start that here with the flow. So using flow, what from a culture perspective, what is flow about, or what does flow mean? How does flow and culture, what do they have in common?
Continuous motion.
Yeah. Okay.
It's effortless.
Maybe flow of information, like sharing knowledge.
That. So culturally, so for your culture, from a value and belief set, so what we're trying to do here is you take the word flow is, what's the values and beliefs of flow that you know, so in our heads, all of us are going to have a different list, but if we think of it that way, from a culture perspective, that's what it's about, is we're going to have a culture with the value and beliefs of flowing data. So these are good. So yeah, effortless, flowing, continuous motion, sharing. Any others? Thoughts on this? This is the value belief set of how we're going to define our culture now.
Feedback.
What was that? Sorry?
Feedback.
Feedback. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to, that's good. Let's go ahead and go down now to mindset. So if we're going to have a flowing mindset, what does that mean? How does that work for us?
flowing
Not
collaboration.
stagnant. I said it's not stagnant. It's not fixed.
Openness.
Yeah. Transparency.
Yeah. All right. And then from a people perspective, then how would that correlate to people then?
I understand people like, let's say, for me, I would replace it like behavior.
Yeah, okay.
The acting based on the mindset. And for this, flow is like, I would put a feedback here, actually.
Okay, we can do that. We can use words.
Momentum.
Accountability. Oh, sorry, Mike. Like accountability.
Integrity.
Okay. What was in, I missed one in there. Mike, you said something.
Well, I was saying momentum. You know,
Momentum.
people tend to flow one direction. Sometimes, you know, we need to think about how does direction change? How does flow stay fluid?
Okay.
If you prefer to flow one direction, but maybe you can't.
Ability to adjust.
Yeah.
I think alignment is important. Well, yeah. So I guess in the vein of ability to adjust, right? People need to reset expectations around big bang releases to delivery of continuous value, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I like alignment too. Alignment's a great word.
All right, let's go ahead. That was good. So let's go ahead and let's move on to from a process flow. For those that haven't really spoken up, you guys have any ideas?
Workflow.
Got it.
Cadence.
Workflow, cadence.
Like that one.
Okay.
And be a value stream.
Value stream. Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. So value stream. Yeah, that's a framework of how we could figure this out. Yeah. How about uninhibited? Meaning you want to flow freely, right? Because it's and you got to think about that cycle time. How do you get that idea? You reduce the cycle time to get that idea into the hands of the customer so they actually can use it.
So maybe feedback here as well then.
Is that what you call feedback? Okay.
I'll give you one, John. Repeatable.
All right. All right, let's move on to tools and technology. So how would we flow with tools, and how would flow apply to tools and technology?
Maybe the workflow I said before, I would put it maybe here.
The workflow.
Okay. Like the ability of that technology to support workflows. Like the capability of it.
I like the enabling word, just the word enable. That's a good word.
Should we go one further from enabling and say empowering?
Absolutely. And the reason why I'm jumping on that, Mike, is because going back to tools and technology, one of the or maybe it was when we walked through the sequence at the start of the presentation, that the engineers and the developers, when you select your tools and technology, it should not be dictating how they're going to work. So that's why I really like empowering, because your engineers and the developers and the folks that are using the tooling, they want to be empowered, and they should be empowered to make those decisions.
Citizen development.
What was that?
Citizen development.
Development. Okay.
Like citizen, like that the customer can
Community. Community, yeah.
Is citizen and community development the same, or are they different things? What do you call them?
I think that they are different.
Different. Okay.
This is about low code, no code.
Right.
Easy to use, easy to access.
Yep. All right. All right. So
I'll send one more for you, John. I use a British term, fit for purpose.
Yep. Perfect. All right. So as you guys can see, so if we take a moment here and just reflect on what we just did, you can see, getting it down and focusing to one word, there's a lot of value in that. And you notice once we started going, it was hard to get initially started, but once we started going, what I was hearing was the ideas were coming, and, it started flowing from people. Sorry to use the pardon the flow, but right? The thinking, the ideas, the words, they started flowing. And that's really what it's all about, is jump in, start having the conversations, get the ideas flowing, and write it down, and like I like to say, is go with the flow, right? And that's really what it's all about. And so that right there was what we experienced here, is very much what it was like with my client the first time we sat down and went through the initial meetings, when they were trying to figure out, we got to make this big, this is going to be a big leap for us. How do we do it? And it's just sit down and start having the conversation. All right. So thanks everybody for participating.
Yeah, it's a great method, actually, kind of icebreaker. It's a good way to start a conversation.
Yeah, we could have done it at the beginning.
Yeah, but everybody's like, oh, what's that mean? Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit of a trick too, right? So the idea was to kind of get you guys to think about words the entire session. So
can I make a screenshot of this one?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Absolutely.
Like it. Thank you.
Yeah. And so the technique we're using here, again, this is what we're trying to do, is not just be a bunch of talking bobbleheads, but we want you to experience it and go through this, so that use what we did here with your clients, with yourself, with your projects, with your team. Go ahead and use these tools and techniques that we're doing here. And if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out to us, right? I mean, that's what we're here for. Okay, so questions. Yeah, anybody got any questions or thoughts, or?
Just I find this webinar very helpful for me, very insightful. Big takeaways from this. I would like to highlight for me what is in my, let's say, one of those things which are for me important, and I'm focusing on it, is knowledge sharing. And I'm very happy how the knowledge sharing is abandoned into this approach, and how important is it, because I know how difficult it is to enable knowledge sharing within an organization, and it includes everything, the whole circle, from culture through process until tools. And mostly people focus, when it comes to knowledge sharing, then they start to think about knowledge base, the first thing, and talk and lead conversations about knowledge bases. And for me, it really starts with first with culture and the change of the mindset, the willingness to share knowledge, and then continue to people and processes. And the last thing is the tool, actually.
Yeah. No, it's good. Thank you. And glad you could use it, and glad it's going to be helpful for you.
Yeah, very, very. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? Looking over here, you guys are using the screen. So one thing I'll say here, this comment, right? If we don't have any other questions or comments, or Ernie, did you have one or no? I just saw your hand go up, but no. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah. So one thing I was thinking about this, Ken, and this is something new from, what we talked about last night. It sort of hit me this afternoon, was the ignition point, right? This is all about igniting project to product. And when I was reflecting on what is the one takeaway here that about that igniting that I could share with you guys, it's going to be when you're working with your client, or if you're part of that organization. So it was people in my client's organization and myself. What happened is we got to a point where there was critical mass. There was a critical mass of people where they had their light bulb moments, the aha moments, and I get it. I get how I need and can flow value. Oh, I get what my team does. When we had a critical mass within the team, it was crazy. It was like somebody had supercharged the room. The lights seemed to be brighter. People were happier. You could actually feel that energy. And it was all about hitting that critical mass. And so that to me is, I would say for you guys, is use that as one of your personal checkpoints to say, hey, where are we at in this journey? Have we met that critical mass yet? Or have we reached that critical mass where enough folks have understood and get this flowing value to the customer to then really start driving it forward? And what I can say is that once we hit that critical mass and we had that feeling, it was crazy, because our ability to produce started really going up and up and up at an exponential rate. And it was evident to everybody. And that's when everybody really started taking notice. So again, that's, I would say, one thing. What's the ignition, or what's the igniting all about? It's follow what we talked about, and then be on the lookout and look for how to achieve that critical mass as soon as possible, so you guys can hit that takeoff point. Ken, anything else to add? Or?
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Sorry.
So go ahead.
What is the percentage? Is it 10% or 20%?
Well, that's why I'm saying critical mass, right? You'd think it's 50%, right? But what we had DevOps Catalyst talk about is when you're doing these transformations, there's a nucleus of change, that catalyst nucleus, we call it. And that catalyst nucleus is where you get a core group, key piece of, or, group of people, and they are so passionate and so excited that it just energizes everybody around them. And that's where your transformation starts going. And the same thing, and that's sort of like what we're talking about here, is that, there's going to be a percentage. It depends upon, what I would say is, it depends upon the passion and the energy of the people for how they want to jump into flowing value, right? So you could have as little as 20%, 25%, depending upon the size of the project and the scope or whatever. It could maybe a little bit more than that, but yeah, don't try and think of it as percentages. It's more about really productivity. And it's really that gut feeling that you get, or just when you're looking at each other and you're smiling and saying, wow, we're making it, this is really happening. That's really when people are saying, wow, this is really happening. That to me, I guess, is when, those are indicators of you're hitting that, people have hit that critical mass, or you're getting there, right? They've hit the critical mass. They're exchanging openly. We're doing it. The excitement's buzz. You got the buzz in the air, the excitement. That to me is what I would be on. That would be how I would indicate that.
Yeah, if you've been in this space for a little while, you've probably read the Phoenix Project. You may or may not have read the follow-up called the Unicorn Project. And if not, I'd highly recommend it, because it's fictional. It's sort of a business fable, so to speak. But the story is a great illustration in my mind of what John refers to as that critical mass. It tells the tale of software developers and engineers and technical people meeting at the pub after work and deciding that they were going to make a change in the way they work. And you see the embodiment of the self-organizing, high-performing teams starting out in the pub after work, and then it spreading through the rest of the organization. And hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler if you haven't read the book. But yeah, for those of you on the call, if you haven't read it, I'd certainly recommend both of those.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to leave you with one of my learning models that I use sometimes, and it's about resiliency. And I think that Unicorn book talks about, you know, being resilient and having the ability to just kind of, you know, stay the course. And so I'm gonna give you a mnemonic to be a good resilient leader. Okay, a DevOps leader, you need to be able to listen. Okay, LISTEN. So the mnemonic for that is take time to learn. Take time to think about this transformation sequence that we talked about. Learn. The I would be interpret. Interpret that for your organization. The S would be to shape. Shape what you do for your organization. LIS, shape. And then finally, then you get to that transformation point. The T is transformation, you know, because then you can transform your organization. But once you transform, what do you do beyond that? You've transformed. You can't change back. You've transformed. The E is for evolve. Continue to evolve. You know, it's just like CI/CD. You're going to be continuous. And then finally, the N is nurture. Nurture your organization. Be that leader. Be that leader that says, okay, we came through this. We've been resilient, and we're going to now pass it on, you know, pay it forward, whatever you want to call it, to nurture the next generation.
All right. So let's go. So yeah, just to sort of close things out and wrap things up, we've got the DASA Leader and DASA's Coach courses coming up that we're offering. Ken and I are teaching the Leader. The date may be shifting on that. Right now it's in March, but that may be moving out to April. And then the DASA's Coach, Christine is still here. So, but yeah, Christine and I are going to be teaching, and Jorge are going to be teaching the coach class coming up. That's up here in March. One book. So if you guys on this topic, if this topic is near and dear to you or something you guys really see valuable, to really get into depth, highly recommend Mick Kirsten's book here, Project to Product, exactly, you know, what we're talking about tonight. He is basically the industry leader right now. This book is very hot, very popular, and it's he's working with the flow framework, the flow metrics, all that. He is I would say the subject matter expert to go to right now in this topic area. So if you don't know about this book or haven't, you know, seen it, go ahead and take a screenshot, but I'd highly recommend. This is he has a bunch of podcasts here, so you can take, you know, some of the metrics and some of the, you know, information he's putting out. I'd highly recommend to dive deep on this. Definitely follow Mick. All right, and with that, we just, you know, want to say thank you. For myself, you know, I just, you know, where I'm coming from it is I like teaching people how to be that transformational leader. And that's what Tire's about, transforming your ideas into reality. I have another book coming out shortly called KISS, Keep Intuition Simple. And it's all about being that intuitive transformational leader. And to me, that's really the embodiment of what we talked about today, the leader it takes to be successful in transforming. And then, you know, then even going further is being that intuitive transformational leader. So if that stuff interests you, then, you know, feel free to reach out to me. But that's, you know, I'm here to help you guys any way we can.
Yep. And as far as thank you guys for attending. If you want to learn more about some of the things I've been talking about, some of the stuff that I was talking about today comes from my social knowledge book a few years ago. Talk about organizational currencies, those things that exist in every organization, whether they are professed or not, they are there, and some barriers with regard to knowledge sharing and things like that. This idea of social knowledge management is the key to this one. A new book coming out as well that you're going to probably see some of the new things we talked about today. Just really enjoyed working with you today, John. I'll tell you, it was a blast. So we have to do this again.
Oh, we are in the leader class. That's the next one coming up. Yeah. So guys, I hope, you know, Anders and Alberto, you know, and Jan and Ernie, thank you guys for sticking around. Hope this was useful. Again, reach out to us, DASA, we're here for you. And yeah, just again, hope this was valuable to you.